Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Storytime with Mr. Haque. So those of you who have been joining me regularly will know that we are reading this book, Isaac Asimov's I, Robot. We are currently in the process of reading the fourth story in the collection. It is called Catch That Rabbit. Where we left off then is that Donovan and Powell are trying to get to the bottom of why it is that Dave, or the DV5 robot, and his subsidiaries are constantly failing to reach their quota of ore that they're mining for on this meteor. It appears that when these robots are being observed by either Donovan or Powell, then they are doing fine. They are reaching their quota. However, when they are left to work independently under the leadership of the head robot, Dave, there seems to be a problem. Having observed Dave and the subsidiaries, Powell, in secret, Powell discovered that something very strange is going on. It's like the robots go into a trance and they seem to be performing this hypnotic ballet, and once they come to, well, specifically Dave, he doesn't seem to know exactly what happened. So Powell has come up with a plan to ask one of the subsidiary robots, or one of the fingers as they describe them, as to find out exactly what's going on. Okay, so we'll pick up there. Neither Powell nor Donovan had ever had previous occasion to talk to a finger. It could talk. It wasn't quite the perfect analogy to a human finger. In fact, it had a fairly developed brain, but the brain was tuned primarily to the reception of orders via positronic field, and its reaction to independent stimuli was rather fumbling. Nor was Powell certain as to its name. Its serial number was DV52, but that was not very useful. He compromised. "Look, Powell," he said, "I'm going to ask you to do some hard thinking and then you can go back to your boss." The finger nodded his head stiffly, but did not exert its limited brain power on speech. "Now, on 4 occasions recently," Powell said, "your boss deviated from brain scheme. Do you remember those occasions?" "Yes, sir," Donovan growled angrily. "He remembers. I tell you, there is something very sinister." "Oh, go bash your skull. Of course the finger remembers. There is nothing wrong with him." Powell turned back to the robot. "What were you doing each time? I mean, the whole group?" The finger had a curious air of reciting by rote, as if he answered questions by the mechanical pressure of his brain pan, but without any enthusiasm whatever. He said, "The first time we were at work on a difficult outcropping in tunnel 17, level B. The second time we were buttressing the roof against a possible cave-in. The third time we were preparing accurate blasts in order to tunnel further without breaking into a subterranean fissure. The fourth time was just after a minor cave-in." "What happened at these times?" "It is difficult to describe. An order would be issued, but before we could receive and interpret it, a new order came to march in queer formation." Powell snapped out. "Why?" "I don't know." Donovan broke intensely. "What was the first order? The one that was superseded by the marching directions?" "I don't know. I sensed that an order was sent, but there was never time to receive it." "Could you tell us anything about it? Was it the same order each time?" The finger shook his head unhappily. "I don't know." Powell leaned back. "All right, get back to your boss." The finger left with visible relief. Donovan said, "Well, we accomplished a lot that time. That was real sharp dialogue, all the way through. Listen, Dave, listen, Dave and that imbecile finger are both holding out on us. There is too much they don't know and don't remember. We've got to stop trusting them, Greg. Powell brushed his moustache the wrong way. So help me, Mike. Another full remark out of you, and I'll take away your rattle and teething ring. All right, you're the genius of the team. I'm just a poor sucker. Where do you stand? Right behind the 8-ball. I tried to work it backward through the finger and couldn't, so we've got to work it forward. A great man, marvelled Donovan. How simple that makes it. Now, translate that into English, master. Translating it into baby talk would suit you better. I mean that we've got to find out what order it was that Dave gives just before everything goes black. It would be the key to the business. And how do you expect to do that? We can't get close to him because nothing will go wrong as long as we are there. We can't catch the orders by radio because they are transmitted via this positronic field. That eliminates the close range and the long range method, leaving us a neat, cosy 0. By direct observation. Yes, there's still deduction. Huh? We're going on shifts, Mike, Powell smiled grimly, and we are not taking our eyes off the visiplate. We're going to watch every action of those steel headaches. When they go off into their act, we're going to see what happened immediately before, and we're going to deduce the order. Donovan opened his mouth and left it that way for a full minute. And then he said in strangled tones, I resign. I quit. You have 10 days to think up something better, said Powell warily. Which for 8 days Donovan tried mightily to do. For 8 days on alternate 4-hour shifts, he watched with aching and bleary eyes those glinty metallic forms move against the vague background. And for 8 days in the 4-hour in-betweens, he cursed United States robots, the DV models, and the day he was born. And then, on the 8th, when Powell entered with an aching head and sleepy eyes for his shift, Donovan stood up and with very careful and deliberate aim launched a heavy bookend for the exact centre of the visiplate. There was a very appropriate splintering noise. Powell gasped. What did you do that for? Because, said Donovan almost calmly, I'm not watching it anymore. We got 2 days left and we haven't found out a thing. DV5 is a lousy loss. He's stopped 5 times since I've been watching and 3 times on your shift, and I can't make out what orders he gave, and you couldn't make it out, and I don't believe you could ever make it out because I know I couldn't ever. Jumping space. How can you watch 6 robots at the same time? One makes with the hands and the other with the feet, and one like a windmill, and another is jumping up and down like a maniac, and the other two, devil knows what they are doing, and then they all stop. So, Greg, we're not doing it right. We've got to get up close. We've got to watch what they're doing from where we can see the details. Powell broke a bitter silence. Yeah, and wait for something to go wrong with only 2 days to go. Is it any better than watching from here? It's more comfortable. Ah, but there's something you can do there that you can't do here. What's that? You can make them stop at whatever time you choose, and while you're prepared and watching to see what goes wrong. Powell startled into alertness. How's that? Well, figure it out yourself. You're the brains, you say. Ask yourself some questions. When does DV5 go out of whack? When did that finger say he did? When a cave-in threatened or actually occurred? When delicately measured explosives were being laid down? When a difficult seam was hit? In other words, during emergencies. Powell was excited. Right. When did you expect it to happen? It's the personal initiative factor that's given us the trouble, and it's just during emergencies, in the absence of a human being, that personal initiative is most strained. Now, what is the logical deduction? How can we create our own stoppage when and where we want it? He paused triumphantly. He was beginning to enjoy his role, and answered his own question to forestall the obvious answer on Powell's tongue. "By creating our own emergency," Powell said. "Mike, you're right." "Thanks, pal. I knew I'd do it someday." "All right, and skip the sarcasm. We'll save it for Earth and preserve it in jars for future long, cold winters. Meanwhile, what emergency can we create? We could flood the mines if this weren't an airless asteroid." Witticism, no doubt," said Powell. "Really, Mike, you'll incapacitate me with laughter." "What about a mild cave-in?" Donovan pursued his lips and said, "Okay by me." "Good, let's get started." Powell felt uncommonly like a conspirator as he wound his way over the craggy landscape. His subgravity walk teetered across the broken ground, kicking rocks to right and left under his weight in noiseless puffs of grey dust. Mentally, though, it was the cautious crawl of the plotter. He said, "Do you know where they are?" "I think so, Greg." "All right," Powell said gloomily, "but if any finger gets within 20 feet of us, will be sensed whether we are in the line of sight or not. I hope you know that." "When I need an elementary course in robotics, I'll find an application with you formally and in triplicate. Down through here." They were in the tunnels now. Even the starlight was gone. The two hugged the walls, flashes flickering out the way in intermittent bursts. Powell felt for the security of his detonator. "Do you know this tunnel, Mike?" "Not so good. It's a new one. I think I can make it out from what I saw in the visiplate, though." Interminable minutes passed, and then Mike said, "Feel that?" There was a slight vibration thrumming the wall against the fingers of Powell's metal-encased hand. There was no sound, naturally. "Blasting! We're pretty close." "Keep your eyes open," said Powell. Donovan nodded impatiently. It was upon them and gone before they could seize themselves, just a bronze glint across the field of vision. They clung together in silence. Powell whispered, "Think it sensed us?" "Hope not, but we'd better flank them. Take the first side tunnel to the right." "Suppose we missed them altogether?" "Well, what do you want to do? Go back?" Donovan grunted fiercely. "They're within a quarter of a mile. I was watching them through the visiplate, wasn't I? And we've got 2 days. "Oh, shut up. You're wasting your oxygen. Is this a slide passage here?" The flash flicked. "It is. Let's go." The vibration was considerably more marked, and the ground below shuddered uneasily. "This is good," said Donovan. "If it doesn't give out on us, though." He flung his light head anxiously. They could touch the roof of the tunnel with a half upstretched hand, and the branchings had been newly placed. Donovan hesitated. "Dead end. Let's go back." "No, hold on." Powell squeezed clumsily past. "Is that light ahead?" "Light? I don't see any. Where would there be light down here?" "Robot light." He was scrambling up a gentle incline on hands and knees. His voice was hoarse and anxious in Donovan's ears. "Here, Mike, come up here." There was light. Donovan crawled up and over Powell's outstretched legs. "An opening?" "Yes. They must be working into this tunnel from the other side now, I think." Donovan felt the ragged edges of the opening that looked out into what the cautious flashlight showed to be a larger and obviously main stem tunnel. The hole was too small for a man to go through, almost too small for 2 men to look through simultaneously. "There's nothing here," said Donovan. "Well, not now, but there must have been a second ago, or we wouldn't have seen a light. Watch out." The walls rolled about them, and they felt the impact. A fine dust showered up. Powell lifted a cautious head and looked again. "All right, Mike. They're there." The glittering robots clustered 50 feet down the main stem. Metal arms laboured mightily at the rubbish heap brought down by the last blast. Donovan urged eagerly, "Don't waste time. It won't be long before they get through, and the next blast may get us." "For Pete's sake, don't rush me." Powell unlimbered the detonator, and his eyes searched anxiously across the dusky background where the only light was robot light, and it was impossible to tell a projecting boulder from a shadow. "There's a spot in the roof, see it? There's a spot in the roof, see it? All over there? The last blast didn't quite get it. If you can get it at the base, half the roof will cave in." Powell followed the dim finger. "Check. Now fasten your eye on the robots and pray they don't move too far from that part of the tunnel. They're my light source. Are all 7 there?" Donovan counted. "All 7? Well then, watch them. Watch every motion." His detonator was lifted and remained poised while Donovan watched and cursed and blinked the sweat out of his eyes. It flashed. There was a jar, a series of hard vibrations, and then a jarring thump that threw Powell heavily against Donovan. Donovan yelled, "Greg, you threw me off. I didn't see a thing." Powell stared about wildly. "Where are they?" Donovan fell into a stupid silence. There was no sign of the robots. It was as dark as the depths of the river Styx. "Think we buried them?" quavered Donovan. "Let's get down there." "Don't ask me what I think." Powell crawled backward at tumbling speed. "Mike!" Donovan paused in the act of following. "What's wrong now?" "Hold on." Powell's breathing was rough and irregular in Donovan's ears. "Mike? Do you hear me, Mike?" "I'm right here. What is it?" "We're blocked in. It wasn't the ceiling coming down 50 feet away that knocked us over. It was our own ceiling. The shocks tumbled it." "What?" Donovan scrambled up against a hard barrier. "Turn up the flash." Powell did so. At no point was there room for a robot. At no point was there room for a rabbit to squeeze through. Donovan said softly, "Well, what do you know?" Okay, right. So the great plan, what they have deduced is that these robots seem to go off sync when there is some kind of emergency. So Powell and Donovan have come up with a plan to create an emergency and see what the response of the robots are. Unfortunately, at this stage, things aren't quite going to plan. Let's see if they get things back on track tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.